Hey everyone, my name is Seth. This is the Books Business Growth Podcast where we talk to Amazon sellers, e-commerce entrepreneurs and business owners about their journey, what makes them tick and why they have been successful. So without further ado, please sit back and enjoy the show. Welcome to the show, Kev Blackburn. How are you doing?
I'm doing outstanding, thank you, Seth. How are you?
I am very well. It's Friday, it's sunny. There's nothing to complain about. So we might as well dive straight in. It would be amazing if you could kind of introduce what you do, how you got into Amazon, and we can kind of free flow from there, if that's all good.
It sounds good to me. I can definitely relate from it's just been a very cold winter here at the warehouse, so it's nice that it's starting to warm up a little bit. But just a quick introduction to myself. I started my Amazon business in 2015. I was an electrical engineer by trade. I'd literally just completed my first class degree in electrical engineering, got the dream job that I thought that I was working towards. But very quickly, I didn't have a lot of time for my family. I became a father at 18 years old, so I had my son quite early on. And then at the start of 2015, I had my daughter. And at that moment in time, I was working a lot, being an engineer, getting called out. And I watched a TV program that you'll probably know, Seth, The Apprentice with Lord Alan Sugar. And one particular episode, the two teams had £500 to spend, and whoever could turn that £500 into the most, whatever they wanted to do, sell stuff, they would win for that particular episode. So we did a family apprentice challenge, but it wasn't with £500, it was with £10 each. So to me, it was like, okay, I'm going to go to a charity store. So I ended up going to Sue Ryder here in the UK, and I found these like porcelain birds that were like 75p, £1 each. And I thought to myself then, I had no idea of Amazon FBA. I thought, right, well, I'll just put them up on eBay. There's got to be somebody in the country that is enthusiastic about these particular birds because they were like dated, I had a signature on, really good, high quality from what I could see. Made them available on eBay, and over the next couple of days, I was at work, I was making these sales. My phone would go off with a ping, and I'd be like, wow, I've just made a sale of these birds. The problem with that came, I had to then get home, go to the post office, you know what it's like, bubble wrap everything, stand in line, and I was thinking to myself, right, there's something in this. Like, if I could sell like 5-10 little birds, would I be able to find more? And would I be able to scale this? And that's when I learned about Amazon FBA, and it was like a light bulb moment where it was like, wow, Amazon allow you to ship everything you possibly can for sale, and there's this Prime. And up until that point, I just thought Amazon sold everything on Amazon. I wasn't even aware that there was like third-party sellers. So
how did you find out about that? Sorry, like what was the thing that got you onto realizing that about third-party sellers and stuff? Sorry if you were going to say that.
So it was a friend of mine. I'd actually told him that I'd sold these birds on eBay, and it was a nightmare having to go to the post office. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, well, have you heard of fulfillment by Amazon?" And I was like, What's that? And he was saying that, well, you could actually ship all your products to Amazon's fulfillment centers, and they would take care of the shipping, the customer support. And bearing in mind, at that moment in time, being an engineer at the steelworks, that was like, right, okay, so I could ship like a whole box to Amazon, and then I wouldn't have to go to the post office and things. So that's how I ended up finding out about that. At that moment in time, we were using camelcamelcamel. I'm not sure whether you remember camelcamelcamel, Seth. But then Keepa was free. And I started to study, like, what's happening on the sales pages of Amazon. And I was like, what does sales rank mean? And how does Keepa graphs work? And I started to sort of figure this out. And then that got me into the world of arbitrage and online arbitrage. And I thought to myself, well, I could sell new products, not just second-hand products at a charity store. And then I was going through clearance sections on Argos, Toys R Us at that moment in time, Tesco Direct when they were still here. And we ended up testing this with 4 Monsters Inc. Scully dolls. They were roughly around about £12.50 each. And we ended up getting first sales on Amazon round about the 3rd or 4th of June of 2015, where I was selling them for like £29, £30, and we were able to get quite a good profit on these. And then I thought to myself, wow, if I was able to this now works, because at this moment in time, I'd never created a shipment before, had no idea how to label a product, had no idea how to box items, not a clue. I was like stumbling my way through. But once I'd done it once, I was all in, because I could see then if I could find one product, I could potentially find like 10 products. And if I could find 10 products, I started to think I could actually work for myself, and I could be at home with Harper at that moment in time. Kylie was at home on maternity leave, and it was really depressing not being able to be at home with my family. So my first goal was, can I quit the job? And over the next 6 months, first month sales was roughly around about 6,500. Then by the December, we'd sold just over £36,000, which was more than I was earning like annually as my electrical engineer. I was burning at all ends at that moment in time. Up first thing in the morning, up last thing at night with my daughter Harper, and I come to a crossroads where it was like, got to either quit what I'm doing with Amazon because it's just not healthy, trying to do so much, or do I go all in? And myself and Kylie always said, look, by the time we get to 40 years old, we just want to have no regrets. And even though I had just become an electrical engineer and I'd gone through 8 years worth of studying to become an engineer, I thought to myself, I would always look back thinking, what if? And that's why we quit the job. And since then, just to fast forward you, we ended up moving into our first warehouse in the June of 2015. Then in the June/July of 2020, 4 years had passed, we moved into this 10,000 square foot warehouse. During that time, I've had the amazing pleasure of being able to start building my own team, virtual assistants, as well as being involved in this amazing community that we have, meeting so many people like you today, Seth.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for that. I can relate to a lot of it. The first thing I just wanted to touch on before diving into Amazon a bit more is The Apprentice. I don't know if you've watched the latest series, but I've been watching a few episodes on it, and I'm wondering whether they've dumbed it down now or whether I've just got smarter from since I used to watch it, because I feel like the contestants on it before, so for people listening to the US, they probably know it because it was the one that Donald Trump used to be on, and then Arnold Schwarzenegger. But yeah, I don't know if you've watched the latest one, Kev, but
I haven't watched the latest one, no.
They just seem like they want to be on a reality show. They don't seem like they're business people, and I'm not sure whether it's always been like that or not, but it's I can't say I'm going to watch it the whole way through because it's a bit of a shambles, but it's super cool that you did that family challenge.
Yeah, it was just super practical, and one thing that I always enjoyed, because I went through an apprenticeship, I always like to be hands-on. I just learn better that way, like being able to see things and get hands-on. And I just like the idea of like, can you turn £10 into as much money as you possibly can? And I turned to physical products and e-commerce because I could already see Amazon were growing massively as they've continued to do. But historically, I'd always know of eBay. I'd always, eBay was the place where you just sold things that were in your garage. So, it was super hands-on and practical, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, so I suppose that's the transferable skill set that got you from electrical engineering, but it's not necessarily, you wouldn't necessarily expect an entrepreneur to have done an electrical engineering degree, right? I mean, it's not unusual, but it's also not stereotypical. Like, did you have design? You didn't have any designs when you were younger to be an entrepreneur or to run your own business. It kind of just like you fell into it. Would you say?
Well, I don't have a story from a sense of I wasn't in the playground trying to make a side income or anything like that. I did have, I always wanted to do something of my own. I just had no idea what that actually looked like. And it was actually in 2013, Kylie's uncle has a fantastic entrepreneurial story where he been very, very successful in his business, built some fantastic businesses, and he's got a great holiday home out in Mallorca. He's got a boat out there, and he was telling me this story and telling my brother-in-law Gareth this story, and something just resonated that like, I really want to start a business, and it just took me 2 years to find the opportunity that I was looking for.
No, that's really cool. But I'm also really impressed that you took the leap to quit your job, because obviously you had a son, you had a family to take care of, and you had a safe, secure job. So, I mean, you've already touched on the fact that you wanted to live with no regrets, but it's still really impressive that you were able to take the leap. Like what else was going? Surely a lot was going through your mind. Like, what if we fail? What if? Like, how did you process that and get through that? Was it the fact that you and your wife kind of made the decision together, so it was easier for you to do that, or?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of components of coming up to such a life-changing moment. Yes, no regrets was a component of that, but there was also myself and Kylie. We never really see each other from a perspective of, she was a self-employed hairdresser, I was an electrical engineer, so we had two separate careers. She would work all hours of the day, on the weekend as well. The life that the vehicle that we've chosen, like the careers that we've chosen, fast forwarding, we was never going to be able to work together. We was never able to, from a freedom perspective, just the little things that really drove me at, and still to this day, is like, I was never able to take my kids to school or pick them up from school. I'd always have to ask for permission of, like, school plays, like Christmas plays and Easter plays. I'd always have to, quite rightly, ask for permission of my employer. Can I have a holiday day? Can I come in late at work? And that really, I started to understand that is something that means a lot to me, being able to see my kids grow up. And there was no doubt about it. Like, you have the fears of, what if this doesn't work out, and what if we lose money, or what if it doesn't? There's so many things that happen, but it ultimately come down to stacking all the reasons to why we should give it a shot. And despite thinking of, like, businesses can fail, obviously, a lot of businesses do fail, but I also knew that, what's the worst that could happen? Like, what is the worst that can happen? Like, I've still got my qualifications. Kylie's still got her qualifications. And it was a case of, we had to burn the boats. We had to do this and give it absolutely everything that we had to make it successful. And I kind of feel like, when you come from that point of view, it's do or die. You become really resourceful. So during those first, and still to this day, really, it's about being able to do sacrifice. If I have to stay up late to do work, I'll do work. I'll do that. If I'm not going out on the weekend, I won't go out on the weekend. Really, just sacrificing and putting in as much effort as you possibly can to make it happen for something that means something to you, like your family.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's still really impressive though, because I guess if I was to advise the newbie seller, I would still say to them, keep doing your job until Amazon supersedes your salary, right? But you didn't quite take that, did you? which is ballsy, right?
Yeah, well, we didn't just go, got my first sale and quit. By this point, after the first 6 months, we'd actually already surpassed the VAT threshold. We had already sold roughly around about £130,000 worth of products on Amazon. During that time, we took extreme measures to lower all our expenses. So I was on a good wage. I was on a very, very good wage being 25 years old. But what we did is we cut as many expenses as we could, like Sky television, and anything that we could do, Netflix. We just got rid of everything. The only thing that I needed was obviously my house, the internet, look after my children and the basics of living. But everything luxury based, we really just lowered as many expenses. So when I actually quit the job, I went from, my wage was roughly around about £2,000 to £2,200, depending on overtime, etc. And I cut my wage in half. I ended up dropping to roughly around about £900 a month. What a real minimum wage, which to me, there's an incredible value of freedom. Instead of working now, 50, 60 hours a week, I was able to work for myself. So, my fuel costs dropped. The car, I wasn't using my car as much. These types of things.
Nice, yeah. Those hours in the day that you were spent working, you knew you could fill up with a massive ROI, which I presume were... So were you doing RA and OA to begin with?
I wasn't. I did do some RA, and I very, very quickly realized that retail arbitrage just wasn't for me. For me, online arbitrage was really, really attractive to me because from an engineering perspective, I always like to see things like as visual as I possibly can. And I realized that online arbitrage can be systemized from all the different stages of the process, everything from sourcing to purchasing to shipping to repricer to replenishing. And I realized that the business model could be systemized in this way, whereas retail arbitrage, although yes, it can be systemized as well, I couldn't really see how I would be able to employ somebody in the UK with a vehicle to drive around stores, doing scans and things like that. And I'm sure there's lots of very, very successful people that do that. But for me, it was like I learned about virtual assistants, being able to have a team out in the Philippines, in India, that I could get lists being sent to me, and we could have a sourcing team that could supply us with potential products just using the internet, just going onto stores and supplying products. So that was what attracted me to online arbitrage, and that's why I very quickly stopped retail arbitrage.
Yeah, I was the same as you. I was doing a bit of RA because I was living right next to a Westfield shopping centre. But while you were explaining that to me, what stuck in my head was when I went to like some toy store and I got some massive Barbie in a Volkswagen Beetle, and it was like really good profit. It was on a deal. But I just remember thinking, all I can carry is 2 of these, and I can't just keep going back in and out in the store. It's just not scalable. And I thought, but I can run a program like Tactical Arbitrage or FBA Wizard or whatever is going on, and I can potentially buy hundreds of items in an hour, right? Just from the comfort of my room. So I think obviously RA is great for some people that make it work, but it totally doesn't make sense for me. But what you're saying about systems, clearly that's your electrical engineering background. Would you say that is one of the key reasons why you were able to scale so quickly with OA, because you put systems in place very quickly? Like, what else did you do on top of systems, or like, could you go into more detail into kind of the things that you did?
Yeah, so to me, I really believe that if you want to scale your business, systems is going to play a fundamental part on that. If you think of the biggest companies in the world, Amazon, for example, they're heavily systemized and automated. And that's what allows Jeff Bezos and the Amazon team to have so much operations around the world. So for me, being electrical engineering, the training that I'd come into the business also with the mindset that I don't want to leave a job for another job. I actually wanted to become a business owner. And then I did a lot of studying and lots of different books. I'm sure that I'll be able to recommend some books to you. And I really started to think, okay, if I'm going to build the business, I want to systemize the business. And what does that actually look like? So this is exactly what I did. I got a whiteboard out because I'm quite visual, and if I can see it, then I can sort of believe it, and I can articulate, okay, what do we need to do? So I got a whiteboard out, and I started to think about online arbitrage instead of just online arbitrage as one big complex component. I split that up into, well, what is online arbitrage made up of? And I started to think of like, okay, it is sourcing, purchasing, shipping. If I could have those three major systems, as I've begun to sort of explain this, is if I could increase as many sourcing systems as I possibly can, it would naturally mean I would have the potential to purchase more. And then if I purchased more, then I would naturally have the potential to ship more. So that made logical sense to me, that the more I sourced, the more I would purchase, the more I would ship. Although, yes, you can scale that. And how do you go from 10 leads coming in per day to 100 leads coming in per day? But I began to realize that doesn't equal, that could equal a recipe for disaster, where your business scales out of control. You start to have gaps in your systems, or you might start to lose money, or what's happening with this product? Why is it not sold? So I started to think about the complementary systems around the major systems, such as your replenishing systems, such as your inventory health systems. This is like, what happens if you ship a product and it doesn't sell? And you can't just have a product that's sat there forever collecting dust. You want to have a system in place to get rid of those products, or learn what went wrong with those products. So I started to come up with these different components that make up online arbitrage, and then I just started at one component at a time. So from a shipping perspective, this is where Kylie came in. She was our living room warehouse manager in our dining room and living room. And Kylie would start to do all the prep for me. Then I discovered about virtual assistants, and I could hire sourcing assistants. And that would then make me the purchasing manager. So I would have lists being supplied to me. I started to recruit virtual assistants in different categories: toys and games, health and beauty, groceries, home and kitchen. And I would review those products and purchase those products, and then Kylie would ship those products. And I was then doing like the replenishing, the repricing, the customer messages, the customer feedback. And that's basically what I did. I went through each stage at a time, thinking on how I can outsource that, whether that is to a physical employee, which is more warehouse-based here in the UK, or a virtual assistant, whether that's sourcing assistants, purchasing managers, or even growth managers.
Amazing. So I've got two questions. One is, why did you not go down the prep center route? Why did you use Kylie as the prep center? And secondly, at what point did you, well, I don't know if you did, but I assume you hired a purchase manager at some point. Like when did that happen, and why did you make that decision? Yeah,
so at that moment in time, in June of 2015, I wasn't aware of I don't think Facebook groups were a thing in 2015, but I certainly wasn't aware of like YouTube channels and different YouTube amazing content that you can just find for free out on YouTube now. So to me, I wasn't even aware that prep services existed. I didn't know that was a thing. And me coming from a steelworks, which is very much manufacturing based and processes and systems based, I always just had this desire to want to go and build into a warehouse. I love everything to do with warehousing, setting up teams, processes, getting hands on. There's definitely something attractive about just simply having a laptop, but to me, I've always been, like I said, quite a practical person. So that was the reason why we never really had any intention of going into a prep service. I love the idea of building systems from the ground up, having a complete empty canvas of the warehouse and thinking about the layout, like what would be the flow of products, what systems would we have, what tables would we have. So that was the reason for that. And then from the purchasing manager perspective, Seth, was by the time I'd got to sort of 6 to 12 months into my journey, I was the one that was reviewing and purchasing every day. So I was working with my sourcing assistant team every day, providing feedback, giving feedback on what I'm purchasing, what I'm not purchasing. And what ended up happening after about, I would say, after about six months, I started to suffer from what I call now purchasing fatigue. Like, I don't know, I'm sure you'll be able to relate to this, where it's like, I love what we do, but it's now become super repetitive. I'm just reviewing products every day, looking at Keepa graphs. At that moment in time, there wasn't any great tools that we have available now that you can click a button and do any type of analysis. So the purchasing fatigue started to creep in, where instead of purchasing at 10 a.m. in the morning, it would get to 10:30 a.m. and then it would get to 11 a.m. and then it would get to dinner time or lunchtime. And what ended up happening was I recognized that I was purchasing later and later in the day. I was starting to fall out of love with the passion of like, oh my God, I'm purchasing today. This is amazing. And I ended up actually, in some ways, sabotaging our own operations, because obviously my sourcing team would be grafting and working incredibly hard. And then for those products to be delayed in purchasing, I ended up finding some products that were winners, but they'd now been out of stock because I wasn't purchasing them quick enough. And that then meant I was actually sabotaging it and bottlenecking the growth of my business. So I started to think about, how can I actually outsource purchasing? How can that be done? And to me, it came down to one, having the confidence in somebody that they know what they're doing, so they've got the competence that they know what they're doing. So I started to put criteria in place of like, what is it that we're looking for, training on how to read Keepa graphs, what is online arbitrage, how you would analyze from one store to the Amazon site. Started to just document like, what is the process that I'm following. And then it ultimately comes down to the trust that you have the ability to give somebody the ability to purchase on your behalf. And it took me around about 6 to 8 months to outsource purchasing, but and I think it can be done a lot quicker now. But that was because I didn't really know what I was doing. I was trying to figure this out myself. And in the end, there was a lot of, as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, you have a lot of inner conflicts of like, what if they purchase the wrong product? What if they take off and they purchase all this stuff that's not for the business and they commit fraud? And you have all these thoughts that are going in your mind. And I mean, the reality is there are things you can put in place to prevent that from happening. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And it's funny how I had the same experience. You're kind of scared of giving away maybe your secrets. You're also scared of giving away your logins and stuff like that, because it's a trust issue, and building trust is not necessarily easy. But I just found as soon as I got over that hurdle, I was like, please buy. And I went from like 1 VA to 6 quite quickly, just because I realised that my mind's got over this hurdle now. And as you said, like what you know, what's the worst that can happen? You can put systems in place, you can put securities in place to get there. But no, it sounds like you've approached it the perfect way, and that was how you were able to scale. I don't want to forget that you said that you'd read some good books, and I'm always about book recommendations. So if you've got any good ones, I'd love to hear them, and I'm sure the audience would too.
Yeah, I've got so many great books to recommend. You know, one of the things that I really strongly believe in, and I'm sure you do too, is, you know, entrepreneurship is a personal development journey where you learn either by reading, studying, or you learn by experience and failure. Right? There's a big combination of the two, and I started to study as much as I possibly could. Like, I've read some fantastic books, some to recommend, such as Work the System. That's a fantastic book. E-Myth Revisited. That's a fantastic book. There was some great books such as Traction. Traction's a fantastic book. Clockwork. These are all like systemization books that I'd highly recommend. But I also started to study things like productivity books, like Deep Work. I started to study from people like, you know, Jim Rohn, who was one of my first sort of personal development mentors that I really resonated with. The likes of, you know, the Tony Robbins, some really great valuable books that I've learned from, for sure.
That's awesome. I've definitely made my way through most of Tony Robbins' books, and I've also, this is next on my list for people that are listening, I've got the E-Myth Revisited. So many people have recommended it, and I think I've tried to read it in the past, but it was maybe before I got into Amazon, so I kind of couldn't really relate, and I just put it down. But I think I know that I'm going to like this one. And then also, I've had Lloyd Jones on the podcast recently, and he recommended Traction. So I'm yet to read that, but I will read it. So obviously you've had the mentors in the form of books. Did you have anyone, like you mentioned was it your wife's uncle?
Yeah.
That was a bit of an inspiration, but did you have anyone else that you could pull from? Because I found recently that being able to speak to, you know, people such as yourself and people on the podcast who are, you know, far and above doing better than me is just awesome for my motivation and just for a learning experience. So did you have that? Because obviously you were, as you said, you weren't in the Facebook group space because it was a bit before. So I was just wondering.
No, yeah, I didn't. I've always been a part of masterminds and communities. I really do strongly value the power of going on a journey with others, because everybody, even though you maybe going on the same journey, everybody's getting there, and it's very unique and different experiences. So, being very close in masterminds where we'd get together every week. We'd share what we're learning, what failures that we've had, what successes that we've had. So I've definitely done that. I've also attended a number of events. I've gone to events such as T. Harv Eker's Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, which was a fantastic, like a financial management event, where I met some fantastic people, some still my friends today. I've been to Tony Robbins' UPW several times, where again I met some fantastic people, and through the process also of Facebook groups and the YouTube channel, being able to connect with other like-minded people, you know, there's so much that you can learn from others.
Well, it's great that you've mentioned the Facebook group and YouTube channel. So do you want to talk about like how did that come about, or how did you start with a Facebook group, or was it both at the same time? Or
no, it was actually the YouTube channel. I can't remember when Facebook groups came about, but I don't think there was around until a little bit later on. But in all honesty with you, Seth, when I first started the YouTube channel, it was more of the process of like visually documenting the journey and journaling my own thoughts. So I knew we unfortunately in 2013, just before we met Kylie's uncle, we lost Kylie's father, and during that time, there was no like it is today, like social media, images, and Instagram, and YouTube, and all these things. In my world, we didn't really do much, so we didn't have much like videos and photos, and we had lots of photos, but not so much videos. So one of the things that I thought about on a YouTube channel was, well, if I started to share videos around what we're doing, the warehouse, I knew one day that would be a really great gift for my future children and my future grandchildren. Maybe one day that I'm not here anymore. So that's when I started just to share about vlogs around the warehouse, sharing about online arbitrage, what I'm doing, virtual assistants, building systems. And throughout doing that, I started getting subscribers, I started getting people ask questions. And that's one of the initial reasons why I wanted to start the YouTube channel. And then there's nothing better, in my opinion, than being able to share something with somebody else. Somebody else either has like a light bulb moment or an epiphany, or their outlook on life, in some way you've contributed to them and they've been inspired to take massive action, as I like to call it all the time. And then maybe they've changed their life. Maybe they've got started and they've got some type of belief now, or they've got some results where they've been able to quit their jobs or hire team members for the first time. Like when that started happening, like you can't put value on that. Like that is such an amazing thing. And it becomes quite addictive. You just want to help as many people as you possibly can. And then you start to think, well, what else can I show? And what else have I experienced? And can I create a video on this? And can I create a video on that? And that's basically how it all started, really.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's empowering, isn't it? Being able to see people getting good results and knowing that you're hopefully making a positive impact. But I want to go back to your warehouse. So you mentioned you scaled up to a 10,000 foot square house. Was that in 2020, you said?
Yes.
So I assume that must have come with many challenges. Could you tell us a little bit about maybe the hardest ones, what you learned from them, and maybe a little bit about where you're at now and where you want to go this year and beyond? Yeah,
sure. It like building any business, it's incredibly challenging, and you know that. And for you guys that are listening, business is incredibly difficult, and building a warehouse is incredibly difficult. And when we moved into our 2,000 square foot warehouse in 2016, so we was in that warehouse for 4 years, and one of the most challenging aspects of building the warehouse and getting it up and running is not scaling too quickly in terms of building the warehouse and massive amounts of expenses and have the most fanciest equipment and fancy tables and processing machines. And one of the things that I believe I did very well, and we continue to do this, is be extremely cautious of not advancing as too quickly. So for a period of time, we didn't have shelving. We didn't even have tables to start with. We were just on the floor. But that was okay. To me, I wanted to make sure that I'm investing in the business at the right time. And therefore, my big recommendation would be to anybody to be cautious. And there's a fine balance between overcommitting yourself and then limiting yourself too. So I'm not saying there is a time and a place when you do need to invest in tools, when it's all about efficiency, how quickly and how productive can you work. That's when you can get some return on your business. But so there was that. The most significant experience through that time was we actually suffered an Amazon suspension, which was an amazingly awful experience. This was we had at this point quit our jobs. we'd started hiring, obviously, our virtual assistant team, our warehouse staff. So we had a couple of employees at this point, and our income and our revenue went to completely zero in that suspension. And
Ouch.
to go from selling roughly around about £3,000 to £5,000 per day to zero, and you've got expenses and you've got people, not just my own lives and mine and Kylie's lives, but there's a responsibility that goes on your shoulders that you're now looking after the other people, your virtual assistant team who have got families, your employees that have got families. And fortunately, I was able to resolve that suspension very, very quickly, and we was back up and selling within about 36 hours. But that was a big, big wake up call that we have to be careful with Amazon as well, because this is Amazon's business. And we also have to put contingencies in place, like what happens in the worst case scenario. So this is when, at that moment in time, my YouTube channel was starting to, I was starting to meet some amazing people. I was sharing tours around the warehouse, and I started getting comments of like, why don't you start a prep service? And I have no intention of going into my own warehouse, but can I ship my products to your warehouse? And that was when I thought to myself, well, we've got the warehouse here already. We're shipping every single day already. I've got my team here already, and that would allow me to diversify my income. And so we started that back end of 2016 into 2017. And you know, that was one of the, it was a fantastic thing, because what that did was, not only was we able to operate our own systems on what we'd been developing, I started to actually be able to work very, very closely and personally with other sellers that were trusting us with their products. And that was an incredible thing. And so we started to work with different partners of ours, and then COVID hit. And all of a sudden, as you know, the Amazon just went through the roof. Our 2,000 square foot warehouse got incredibly small very, very quickly. And we then had to take that leap in looking for a warehouse that would allow us to overcome the bottleneck of space, because we just didn't have enough space. We had pallets everywhere, 2,000 square foot. It was starting to slow down our processing, the speed of processing, because space was an issue. So when we found this warehouse, it was 5 times bigger than what we had, but it allowed us to have a new blank canvas again that would now allow us to introduce racking and new ways of processing and different offices, because the old warehouse, all we had was like the one office. We was all in that office. We only had one toilet. There was not even a lunchroom. We was all eating lunch at our desks. And now in this warehouse, we actually have the ability to eat together at a table in a lunchroom. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, it sounds like. Well, it's a huge step up. I mean, the similar parallel I'll be thinking is like with the restock limits that got put in last year. As soon as mine have gone up now, I'm like, I want to fill that space. Did you not? Like you mentioned that you've realised it was good to be cautious with your growth, but did you not just think, we need to fill this 10,000 feet now? And like, because I assume the rent went up massively, right, from 2,000 to 10,000. I don't know if it goes up by 5 times, but it must have been sizable, right?
It doesn't quite go up by 5 times, but there was definitely it's a difference between we could have gone from 2,000 to 3,000 or 4,000, but in all honesty, that wouldn't really allow you to grow much more. So we needed to find the balance between not overcommitting ourselves, but not also undercommitting ourselves. And I feel that the 10,000 at the time when we was walking around it, we could see that it's not a stretch to the point we could snap, But also, we did a lot of negotiating during that time with our landlord here, and we were able to negotiate a good free grace period, which allowed us to get in and also set things up, get going before we started to get rents coming in.
Oh, nice. So it was a calculated risk, but I like the fact that you were basically taking on a challenge that you knew was going to be really difficult, but not so difficult that it's daunting, which is...
It was by far, I would say it was one of the most challenging things. You've probably got experience of moving your own house. Like when you move house, it is tough. Like there's
stressful.
Lots of things to do. Moving a business is another level. There's so much things. Like for a period of about 6 to 8 weeks, we were operating from 2 warehouses because there was a lap over. So sort of logistically moving everything over took some time. It was super, super difficult. I actually vlogged the whole lot, everything throughout that journey, week after week. And I actually said in one of the videos that this has been one of the most challenging things that you have to manage logistically and set up. And it's extremely complex, but I love it. That's what we do, right?
Yeah, well, it goes back to what you said about entrepreneurship is personal growth, isn't it? It's inner work. And I'm sure that process has really propelled you forward. And speaking of propelling you forward, what does the rest of the year look like for you and beyond? Like, I assume you've always got goals and things you want to achieve. Like, if you'd like to share some of them, that would be awesome.
Yeah, sure. I mean, one thing that I have to say is this isn't possible without building a team and building some fantastic and talented and passionate people around you. And throughout the journey, we've been incredibly focused on having some great people in our team. So even throughout the warehouse move, having our virtual assistant team, having our warehouse staff here, getting stuck in, working hard, being involved in building is an amazing thing. So our future and our goals is a part of what we do is we've got some great goals in terms of we have currently 3 warehouses here in the UK. We've got 2 warehouses in the US. We've got 1 warehouse in Europe, and where we're supporting sellers, a part of our systemized fulfillment, helping them not just maybe get started, but scale to that next level. So we've now had partners that have grown in the UK and they want to go out into the US or the EU. We've had partners that want their own warehouses, and what we've done is we've created, over the years, I've learned so much from warehouses perspective. So I try to package all that up in terms of my biggest lessons that I've learned and what equipment that we have and what security that we have and insurances that we have and team building that we've done. And, a big part of the mission that we have is continuing to help people, whether that's just get started, move into warehouses, scale their businesses. And that's where everything that we do from an e-commerce perspective is so enjoyable, because not only do we get hands-on building businesses, we get to go on masterminds like this, get to learn personal stories and what their goals are, and just basically trying to help as much as we possibly can.
Nice. And you're clearly adding value. So if you're adding value for other people's businesses, then they're going to add value to your businesses. And it's just that beautiful flywheel, isn't it? But I would love to touch more on team building, because selfishly, that is something that is very near in my sight at the moment, just because I hired my first VA last January. So it's only been a year, pretty much just over a year since I started being, a manager or a leader or whatever. And yeah, I'd love to myself get some advice, but also for anyone listening who is thinking about getting a VA or who has a fledgling team, like what what has enabled you to build, it sounds like a really incredible, strong team. Like, what were the challenges? Like, you must have had challenges growing, or, and, you know, with hiring always comes firing as well. So like, how do you, I'm throwing a lot at you here, but I basically want you to help me with being a good leader and like some of the challenges you face with maybe like firing, and at what point do you fire someone, you know, because not everyone's ready for the job, right?
Yeah, it's such a big topic, and it's such an important topic because, you know, one of the best assets that you'll ever have is your team. And some of the big lessons that I've personally learned that I can share from my own personal experience is, I always remember when I was working at the steelworks, always feeling as though I had, you know, although I loved the people that I worked with, and I loved the work that I did, but I also felt like you weren't being listened to at times, or you're being restricted, or you know, you just, the culture within your team wasn't really promoting the ability for people to express themselves. And one of the biggest lessons that I've personally learned, and that I would recommend to anybody else, is, you know, if you want to motivate somebody, if you want to influence somebody that can give their best for you, you have to really get personal on understanding what motivates them and what influences them and what goals do they have, what are they working for. And as soon as you know that, like, get to know, like, if they've got, you know, family ambitions, they want to maybe travel one day, they want to buy their first house. Once you know that, you can start to really, you've got your needs of the business, and you can then, as the business owner, start to sell that, the drive and the vision, that, you know, the mission that you've got, saying, look, it's going to take some time, and you're going to have lots of, you know, training, being as clear as you possibly can on like what their role is, if they're doing it, you know, what does doing a good job look like? Hence why I always talk about key performance indicators. How do they know they're doing a good job? Praising when they're doing a good job. How do they know they're not doing a good job? And giving as much guidance on how to do their job as good as possible. So one of the worst things that you could do is hire somebody and not be clear on what their role is, or be clear on what good looks like, what bad looks like, how to do their tasks. So trying to do that as much as possible, it will not only give them the feeling of like, I'm being listened to here, and people are being interested in what I want to do, but also I'm getting the support and the guidance around me, because I've always believed in, as I mentioned, that your team is your greatest asset. And even though it takes, like, us as human beings, it takes time to experience. So like, some of my team members and some of our team now, they've been working with us for 3, 4, 5 years at this point. You know, the value and the experience that they have now after the journey is so immense compared to when we maybe first started. So I think encouraging your team to go on the journey with you, build with you, allow them to express their ideas and express their thoughts, and how you can build to the vision that you have can go a really long way when it comes to team building.
That's super useful. I'm like furiously taking notes here on my little notes app here. But just to because I didn't touch on the firing side, which you specifically mentioned, and that goes side by side then with that. As long as you're upfront and honest about like performance and what's good and what's not so good, that gives you the ability to have those open conversations where you've got clear expectations, you've got clear goals, and if they then don't meet those targets, then it's about how can I support you more with improvement plans, and shall we spend a week together and let's go through and work together and trying to help them the best way you possibly can. If then that doesn't work, then of course at some point you will have to make a choice whether you let that person go or not. Okay, makes sense. A quote that just popped into my head that I've seen a few times is, "You hire slow and you fire fast." So it sounds like you don't necessarily. It sounds like you maybe hire slow and fire not quite as fast. You'll give people a bit more of a chance. Is that the case, or?
Yeah. I mean, I think the higher slow is most definitely imperative, where it's like set up as much as you possibly can, understanding what it is that you're looking for an individual, like whether it's a virtual assistant or a staff member. What type of characteristics are you looking for? What their mindset is, their beliefs are, what core skills that they have. But so a lot of the times you can avoid a potential problem down the line if you just took that time planning your hiring properly. But things do change, things can happen, and I've always been I want my team to succeed, and I'm not saying I wouldn't recommend anybody if one failure happens, that's it, fired, right? I just for me personally, I just don't believe that. I believe that we need to encourage failure, but at the same time, if something happens, we need to learn from that and develop systems to avoid that from happening again. The worst thing that you can do is have repeat failure after failure after failure after failure.
Okay, that makes sense. I'd love to touch a bit more on. So it sounds like you've created a really good culture and you've got high customer retention. What would you say is kind of obviously there's more than one component, but what do you think that's been really useful for you? Like, it sounds like you've got a good working atmosphere, but like, what other stuff would you and your team know the direction of the business, which always helps. That's something I'm really working on this year because I haven't done much of it. But like, do you introduce like team building stuff, or like bonuses or incentive schemes, or like do you offer more leave for certain things like that? Like, do you do anything like that? I'd just like to know more.
Yeah, I mean, making the position and the career as attractive as possible is always going to help. And a part of all that is, we've done things like, we do like summer barbecues, we do Christmas parties. We have also, I mean, just recently, for example, one of the things that we was experiencing was if one of our team members would potentially forget their lunch. So what we've done now in our lunchroom is we've put food out, and we've got like just trying to make the drink out, and we're just trying to make the experience of working with us as great as possible. And a part of that is then like targets, records that you're potentially working towards, quarterly projects that you're potentially working towards. So any type of like incentivized performance celebrations that you can do obviously is going to help drive that motivation and drive the desire to keep turning up, because especially in a warehouse, it can get very, very cold in the winter and it can get quite warm in the summer. So the conditions are, you've got to be adaptable, but you've got to make it as good as you possibly can. So we listen to music. We obviously supply uniform, like it's been quite cold, so we, hats on, gloves on, and anything we can do to support, really.
Sounds like you're a good boss. I didn't actually know you had warehouses in the EU and the US. So did you have to go over there to set them up, or have you kind of taken a hands-off approach? How did that even come about or work?
Yeah, I haven't. It's not a hands-off approach. It's a very, very. For me, the way it came about was we have partners and we have people that inquire, and they wanted to potentially expand out to the US. And over the years, I've built some fantastic relationships with and supported other people that have gone into warehouses. So when we went over to the US, we're in Wisconsin with Jake, and we're in New Jersey with Eunice. The systems that we've developed, a part of how we operate, can be replicated in other locations, like through like a license, if you imagine like a McDonald's.
Franchise, yeah.
Wherever you go, it's sort of the same. So it was a fantastic opportunity for me and for Jake and our partners. For those that wanted to expand or get started in the US, it made sense. Everybody wins. So, and it also allowed us, a part of our greater mission that we had, instead of me going out to the US and getting a warehouse and everything there, I was able to work with other business owners and other warehouses to help them set up their operations, learn how we work, what our core values are, and that's been something that we continue wanting to expand into the future too.
I was going to say, that's super exciting. That makes me think like there could be Kev Blackburn massive action warehouses all over the world. Is that like is that your ultimate goal? Do you think could you be in Australia, Japan, Canada, Mexico? Is that what you're thinking potentially?
That's exactly one of the big goals that we have. We have currently got 3 warehouses in the UK. By the end of this year, we'd like to have 5 warehouses in the UK. Working on a couple at this moment in time in the back, because it takes a long time to set up, and you've got to work through a process and quality control, and we are serving other people's businesses, which we've never taken lightly, because ultimately it's a significant part of their business. So it does take some time, but long term, what we've done, we want to build a global network of warehouses, whether that is one day in the Australia, in India, wherever e-commerce is, which is global. There's nothing stopping us being able to do that.
That's super cool. I mean, we've been chatting for over an hour, and I think that is a kind of a great way to kind of run this conversation down, because I want to be respectful of your time. But I'd love to ask you a final question, which would be, for the Amazon newbies out there, or maybe like newish sellers who are struggling, or people looking to get into Amazon, what would your 1, 2, or 3 key bits of advice for getting started or being able to be a success on Amazon and in physical products be?
Great question. I think I've got a number of advices that I could give is
give all to us if you could.
Throughout the journey, surround yourself with community members and learn, and be like a sponge. Learn from everybody. That's definitely one. The next thing is study the business model that you're working at. Like, business models are different, like whether it's retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, wholesale, exclusive brand deals. Obviously, it's all very different. Really study what metrics are you looking for in terms of a product that you're going to purchase. Don't just obviously guess, and do some studying with the tools that we have now. Keepa, for example, get really, really good at Keepa and studying and analyzing products. Another thing that I would say is, don't compare yourself to anybody. There's some amazing success stories out there, and there's some amazing people doing some amazing things. But at the end of the day, it's your journey, and you're only in the journey with yourself. You're only in competition with yourself. So if you can keep growing and keep learning, just one step forward every day, then that's an amazing thing that you should try to build that momentum. There's nothing worse than getting discouraged when you see somebody's doing this and somebody's doing that, and you feel like you should be further ahead. So you've got to conserve your energy as much as possible. So I would definitely say that. And then I would say that just work on one bottleneck at a time, the best you possibly can. So how you can overcome one bottleneck, whether it might be time, start learning about virtual assistants and team building. It might be learning about financial management. It might be learning about how to leverage capital, whether that's credit or cash, whatever it is. Just take one step at a time where your bottleneck is, and keep working to resolve that bottleneck. And over time, you'll keep building. And I think off the top of my head, obviously, then it comes down to ultimately build systems and take massive, relentless action.
Absolutely love it. That is gold gold advice for any seller, really. I mean, even if you're advanced, you still need to run your own race. That's the only way that social media is a bit toxic, isn't it? Because you start thinking, well, why is that person doing so well and I'm not? And yeah, totally focus on yourself, work on your own issues, one step at a time, build systems. And yeah, absolutely love that. Like, thank you so much for coming on, Kev.
You're very welcome, Seth.
Where can people find you if you want to plug anything? We can put all of the links in the notes, but let us know where to find you on the internet.
If you can just go onto YouTube, search for Kev Blackburn, or just go onto Google and search Kev Blackburn. I've got over 1,000 videos on YouTube at this point on various different topics. Or if you're looking at potentially outsourcing your prep, then we have systemizedfulfillment.co.uk.
Perfect. I can highly recommend the YouTube channel. Loads of really good content there. Hope people will subscribe to the channel. But yeah, thank you again for coming on. Very grateful, and hopefully we could do a round 2 in the future, and you'll have warehouses all over the world, I'm sure.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you so much, Seth. I really I'm super thankful to be on your podcast, and hopefully this has provided value to your listeners, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully seeing more and more successes come from your podcast and the amazing work that you're doing.
I hope so. Thanks very much, Kev. We'll speak to you soon. Ciao for now.
See you later, mate.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you've made it this far, you may as well leave this video a like if you've been watching on YouTube. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for future episode updates. Or if you've been listening on Apple Podcasts, it would be absolutely amazing if you could leave us a review, as that makes a world of difference. Thank you again, and I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao for now.